Hey, what's up guys? My name is Moda and welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be another in the series of Don't F This Up, right? We are now in 2025 officially. This is the year that we have been working for. Let's work at trying to make the most of this thing. So what this one's going to focus on is primarily your mental game, right? This is going to be a huge factor, way more than I think what most people are considering. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about potential exit strategies, like different things to consider, what to look at, and how to prepare for this thing mentally, right? To me, this is going to be one of the biggest factors that's going to determine your success here, right? So if that sounds good, guys, stay tuned. Let's get right to this thing. So this one's going to focus more on like portfolio strategies, different exit strategies, different scenarios that can arise and kind of things to help you out overall. Okay, because this to me kind of something that's not talked about a whole lot, and this is the year where if things go as planned, we're going to make our huge gains that we've been working for. Okay, so this is where it's going to get tough. And for me, honestly, this might be the hardest part because depending on your outlook, depending on your goals, depending on what you're doing, this is one of the hardest parts. It's the mental game, right? We're going to get so in deep if things go as planned or as have they've gone in the past. It's going to be extremely hard to know when to exit, when to think about exiting. Like, these are things that, although it's early, yes, it's January, you need to at least have these things kind of running through your mind already, right? Like, the biggest thing is step up that mental game. Like, set up plans, set up goals, get rid of the emotions, right? Like, as this thing proceeds, we're going to see a bunch of videos like this. This is what your feed is going to be like, your YouTube feed, your Twitter feed, everything around you, if you're in the ecosystem, is just going to be nonstop with this, right? It's going to be these 1000x. This is the next 1000x. We're going to go to this. BTC is going to go to 500,000. All these crazy scenarios, and we're going to see so much of it that you're going to buy into it. You're going to feel it. You're going to feel like this bull market's never going to end. You may be the one who round trips. You may be the one who ends up holding until it's too long, and now you're stuck holding your bags for a whole nother cycle, right? So I really highly recommend start making plans, start making goals, start thinking about it, start looking at overall goals, individual coin goals, like set up those quantities and such that you want to stack of that individual coin. Therefore, you can set up those exit goals. Like, think about these things, right? Because again, it's going to be hard, especially for you guys who are newer in the scene or you've only been here a couple of years. Like, I started back almost exactly 4 years ago, right? So pretty much right at the beginning of the bull market last cycle is when I started, right? So I learned a lot of these lessons by going through them. A lot of the times, regardless of the tips you hear or people's experiences that you hear, in reality, the best learning lesson is you personally experiencing that. You personally, like, holding that bag too long, or you holding onto that meme coin like, oh no, it's going to do another 10x from here. And then you end up taking no profits at all instead of taking an easy 10, 15, 20x, right? It's one of those things that in reality you kind of have to feel, but if you're a person who analyzes things, who really looks at things, you can learn from a lot of our experiences, right? So again, it's going to feel like this. It's going to feel like the bull market's never going to end. You're going to hear theory after theory as to why it's not going to end, why this is the last bear market that's ever going to happen because of everything going on. And it's even something that I kind of somewhat believe a little bit if these strategic reserves kind of go in a little bit. Like, I think we're still going to have bear markets, but maybe for Bitcoin specifically, it's not as aggressive. I think it's going to remain the same for all coins, though, but it may be a little bit different for Bitcoin. Maybe it goes beyond the typical cycle. There's other theories floating around already, and you're going to hear it, right? So maybe it follows the traditional 4-year cycle. Maybe it's running ahead of time, and maybe the peaks out early. Maybe it peaks out before the summer. Maybe it peaks out late spring. Maybe it goes beyond. Maybe it goes well into 2026. Maybe we don't even have that much of a bear market. Maybe we go down 15, 20% and kind of balance out. We don't freaking know, right? So these are the types of things you have to kind of consider because it's kind of all over the place, right? It's not as easy as like, okay, I'm going to follow the 4-year cycle. It's going to go as planned. When I look at the charts, everything peaks right around the same time, right around that November time frame. And this is one with like Kadena, for example. This is one that a lot of people were like, oh man, if I wouldn't have exited out right at the top, it would have sucked. Imagine exiting out right here at $6 instead of just waiting a couple weeks and it going up to 20 something dollars. Right? So a lot of that is going to be situational, right? So a lot of it's going to be determined by how much of that coin you have allocated, how long you've been stacking, what price points you got in. So in reality, I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be very hard to time the exact top. Okay, so you kind of have to be okay with getting certain goal numbers. Okay, so I'm confident I'm not going to be hitting the tops of these things. I'm not necessarily aiming for the full top. And I'm not going to do all at once. I'm not going to hold and be like, yep, November 11th or whatever date, I'm going to sell 100%. I have specific goals. Once I hit certain goals, I'm going to sell a big chunk, which is percentages. As we get closer, as those price targets get a little bit more exact, I'm going to execute, right? And I know, being fully aware, I'm not going to hit the top, and I'm okay with that, right? For example, a lot of people were saying like, oh man, again, it would have sucked hitting the $6 price target. That's probably going to be me, right? Once it hits a number like that, that's where I'll probably be exiting, depending on the coin, depending on the project, depending on the allocation, right? Because again, some people's conception be like, oh man, it sucked, you could have gotten so much more. Probably going to be pretty happy if this is a coin you were stacking, for example, the years prior, or you were buying back when it was like 12, 15 cents throughout all this time, and you stacked for 2 years worth. You're probably going to be doing pretty well even with $6, right? At that point, that's what, a 40 something X. These are the types of things you have to kind of consider. Like at this point, I'll probably sell a good chunk, maybe 50%, maybe as high as 60, 70%. Maybe hold off to see if the traditional cycle does fall through, and maybe just unload the rest, right? And these are the things you can kind of do ahead of time. You can play with different numbers, different goal targets. And the reason I'm kind of saying this is that it's not going to be this easy with all the coins, right? A lot of the coins had different peaks. They didn't all do the same thing that like Kadena did, for example. We'll go through some examples. One example being Dogecoin, for example. They peaked early on. Again, 2021 did have a total of 2 peaks. We had that peak in May of 21, and then later on again in November, right? So some, including Doge, only peaked in that first run. So you can see their peak here was May 5th, 2021 at 65 cents. Okay, that was the peak. That wasn't the high though. I think the high was like 70 something cents. But that was the peak for their cycle, right? If you go all the way to November, when the rest of the coins peaked, they were already on a huge downtrend, right? So like November 11, for example, was down to 26 cents, and it just went down from there. Okay, so like in this example, if you would have not took anything here, like, nope, I'm waiting for that November peak, you would have been kind of screwed, right? And you would have been the person waiting, and then selling down here. Okay, or just round tripping it, just holding it and then giving up over here in the bear market, which is what a lot of people do, and then selling it at 7 cents. Okay, so another example is like with Flux. Flux, their all-time high wasn't hit at either of those times. Their actual peak was beyond the typical cycle. It was January 3rd of 22. Again, most of the other ones peaked in November. Okay, so there's actually peaked afterwards. But again, if you would have sold a good chunk here, you would have gotten the majority of it, right? At this point, like if this was me, I would have 100% dumped 100% here. Would have kind of sucked knowing this, right? But at the same time, it depends on your entry points, how long you've been stacking, and what your overall goals are, right? Or if you plan to hold some beyond just in case, right? Maybe your goal is to sell 50% at a certain target, hang on to the rest, maybe YOLO, maybe it goes up beyond that. Who knows, right? These are things that you kind of have to come up with, kind of think about, try to see. And then as far as other strategies go, it's tough, man, because again, there's going to be so many scenarios. You're going to be so like balls deep into everything that you're going to believe everything, right? Like even right now, recently, look, just a few weeks ago, how much the altcoins freaking pumped. How many of you guys actually took profit during any of those times? Or were you so euphoric that you're like, yep, this is the beginning of altcoin season. This is the beginning of that run up. I know that's where I was at. I didn't see us dropping that aggressively that quickly right after. And these are the kind of mind games you have to kind of see, right? So again, those of you who degen into things, like a good way to kind of learn lessons is like meme coins and such, right? They accelerate so fast, they go up so fast, they rug so fast. It's kind of a good way to prepare yourself to get comfortable with taking profits and not necessarily like holding on for that like 100x. Being comfortable with taking a 10x and then on to the next one, on to the next one. Growing different bags. Again, everybody's strategy is going to be different though. There is no one size fits all for this thing. It's going to be fully dependent up to you. But where it gets hard is, again, we just don't know where those tops are going to be, right? It's going to be massively hard because, again, even giving this example again, if you had like 10,000 Kadena and you sold here, still did, like we said, made a good chunk of money. But at the same time, if you had that same amount of Kadena and you did get somewhere up here, right? Not even the peak, but maybe a few weeks after, that's still a pretty massive difference in capital, especially if you did stack a lot of it. If you're a person who was super early, you had like 50K worth down at these prices, that can be the difference between like 6 figures and potentially 7 figures. This is where your mental toughness has to be there. This is where you have to kind of be okay with the fact that you're not going to hit the top. You're not going to sell at the peak. You're maybe not going to maximize what you have. And that's going to be a very hard burden, right? Like realistically, it's going to drive you batshit crazy if you sold your entire stack at a certain price and you profited maybe 6 figures, and then 2 months later, those 100K became valued at well over $1 million, right? That kind of stuff is possible, and you have to be okay with it mentally, right? You have to set those goals, you have to set those targets, and you kind of have to be comfortable with that fact, right? Like for me, these past 4 years, learned a lot about profit taking, learned about getting comfortable with profit taking, and getting comfortable with the fact of just reinvesting that allocation, right? We did that early on a few years ago with those GPU coins that had those run-ups. When they would go up 10x, I would sell it, wouldn't get the top, they would probably go another good amount beyond that, but then take that profit, roll it into the next one, and then we caught another 5 to 10x. Roll that into the next one, and then keep growing. Either buying more coins, buying more hardware, kind of growing in within our means and just kind of continuing those goals, right? In some cases that worked out well, and others, some of those coins that went up, let's say 3 to 5x where we took profits, some of those turned into 50x's, turned into 60x's. We don't know which ones it's going to be, right? And it's up to you to determine that conviction level, like how strong do you feel about this one, how confident you are about this one, and whether or not you're willing to just roll the dice and roll it to zero, right? These are all just different portfolio strategies, different allocation strategies that you got to kind of consider, because anything can happen, especially in the bull market, right? We've already seen these crazy gains even right now where we're not at the beginning, right? A lot of people are in the mindset that like, oh, I missed out, I'm fully gone, I'm gonna wait for next bull market and then there's still time, right? There's gonna be coins and different scenarios and different things that we haven't even thought of yet. They're gonna come out of nowhere and they're gonna go up like that. A great example right now is with these AI agents. Okay, Virtual's protocol, for example. It's not even a coin that kind of came out of nowhere. Okay, it's been up here since the beginning of 2024. Okay, as recently as October, it was a nickel. Okay, so again, this wasn't a random meme coin. This wasn't something else. This is something that if you were on the ball, you were in there, you were paying attention, went from a nickel to over $4.50 right now with the potential of continuing to go up even more massively beyond this, right? Is it something that's going to last? Is it something that's going to go beyond? Is it a fad? Is it just a current trend? We don't know, but I mean, again, guys, in a 2-month period, 100x gain, it's insane, right? So at this point, nothing is off the table. You are not too late still. You are not at the peak. We still have time. But again, as the time gets closer, it just gets more difficult. But they're still going to be out there. There's still going to be opportunities. Obviously now, this is one I fully missed. It's not one I'd be jumping in now. Although, if this thing takes off, and this is the one for the AI agents, it can still go up more, right? But at this point, at a 4.5 billion, even if it goes up to 50 billion, to me, there's still other opportunities coming, right? And this is the thing where, again, you have to control your emotions, because you're going to feel that damn FOMO. That FOMO is going to be an MFer, man. It's going to be difficult, right? And you're going to have to just, again, take the emotions out. Set up game plans, set up different price targets, set goals, and again, just take those emotions out, right? And a big thing I want to harp on also here, take care of your mental health, right? It's going to get crazy. These next 6 to 10 months are going to be borderline insane, and they're going to drive you insane, especially if you overthink things, you overtrade things. Be comfortable with your choices, right? Make your choices, be bullish on them. Don't be the person who's swapping out and losing, right? A common thing that a lot of people do, and even right now with like Casper, for example, man, it's been going sideways these past 6 months. It's not going to do anything. Look at all the FUD. I'm going to dump it all and then go into this thing that already ran up massively. What do you think's going to happen there, right? This thing may tank. This thing may have peaked already, and then the coin that you sold out of because you were tired of waiting pops off. Okay, things like that are going to happen. So have your conviction, have different plays, set up your portfolio where you have higher conviction plays, where you maybe have a higher allocation that are maybe safer bets, things that maybe won't do a whole lot, maybe only a couple X's, like Bitcoin or Solana, and then have your smaller degen plays, right? Balance that thing out. It's up to you to come up with your own strategy there, but think about these things, guys. Like, seriously, make plans, because you're going to drive yourself crazy. So seriously, if you haven't found something to like kind of take care of that mental health already, get into something, right? Whether it's, physical activity, doing something where you can fully decompress. Like, I'm a big fan of like long distance running, for example, right? It is a great way to get into something where your mind can literally zone out, right? Whatever physical activity it is, running is a big one with that. It's a huge stress reliever, or in reality, anything physical where you can just, you have to focus on 100% on what you're doing, so that way you're not thinking about all the other BS. Because it's going to be around you, right? I'm sure a lot of you guys are degens, always checking on your rigs, always checking on your portfolios. Like, you got to get out of that habit. You got to not do that. You got to, like, get your game plan, check it occasionally, but don't obsess over it. Don't let it alter your mood. Don't let it alter your mindset, what you're doing. Get into something, right? Whether it's long distance running, whether it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. A lot of people love doing that also for the same exact reason, right? For those 5 to 10 minutes that you're rolling, those 10 minutes, your sole focus is to not get choked the fuck out by this dude on top of you who's trying to smother you. Same thing with like long distance running. For that, 5 miles, 10 miles, whatever you're doing, you're solely focused on that one goal. You're focused on your breathing, whatever you're listening to, you're just zoning out. Your mind is able to decompress, even for those 10 minutes, for those 30 minutes, for that hour, to like stop thinking about everything, right? Seriously, consider doing something to really take care of your mental health. Don't be sitting here looking at charts nonstop and regretting your decisions. Oh, I should have done this, should have done that. Really take care of that. I mean, literally, you're going to drive yourself nuts. You're going to outtrade yourself. You're going to make mistakes. That's how you mess up. You did all the hard work these past few years. Don't F it up by doing that. Take care of that mental health, guys. Seriously. But another thing I want to bring up as far as like exit strategies and different things, it's like you have to kind of understand what's going on also. I know a lot of people have been mentioning like the double top, right? We had the one in spring and then in November, like, oh, it's going to do it again. This is going to be a new thing. Make sure when you're looking at historical charts, understand what was going on at that time to kind of give context to why that happened, right? For any guys who were here last cycle, like for me, this is very fresh because I was there, right? So like, for example, the downtrend started, you can see here around May. Okay, what happened during that time? You guys remember? One of the big ones that started it was Elon saying that Tesla's going to stop accepting Bitcoin because of climate change concerns, right? A lot of FUD happened from there. As stupid as that news article sounds, that was enough to put a break on things. The bigger catalyst, though, happened right after, and I think it was the double whammy that caused this, and to me, this was the bigger factor, and that was the China mining ban. And you guys remember, like, yes, although it was kind of BS, essentially what they did is they just relocated to other places. But when this happened, it had a massive effect. It had a massive effect mentally, like people who weren't familiar with what was going on. And they saw the hash rate drop as aggressive as it did, because it is one of the most aggressive drops, period. And the fact that it happened right in the bull market year for 2021, massive, right? For you guys to get the gist of what happened, you can see here we were right under 200 exahash right around May 10th. Okay, not too long after, June 27th, we're down to 75 exahash. Okay, damn near more than half. Okay, significant drop all at once, right during the peak of things. This raised a lot of concerns, right? Just because, again, it was massive. As a miner, though, obviously pretty good because your yield went up. But again, just a lot of security concerns, a lot of like what the hell's going on concerns. And this just back to back FUD, and that's what kind of caused that dip, right? Because the hash rate didn't even recover until the second peak, right? It wasn't until like November, December is when it finally reached this previous number here, right? So that was a pretty significant event. You can even see here in the all-time chart just how big of a hit this was, and the fact that what made it even more significant. It's one thing if we're going into the bear market or something, but this was in the peak year, right in the middle of that bull market year, right? So that's the reason for that double top. So don't rely on this potentially happening again. Although realistically, the summer tends to be more a downtime, so most likely we're kind of leading into a certain little downtrend. It's just these two events, as well as other FUD going on, all just kind of added onto it, right? So just make sure you're understanding that. Same thing when you go back and you're looking during the COVID times. Understand that that's what caused that downtrend also. So just make sure you're looking at the context as well when you're looking at historical data, okay? Because that is a big thing. Another big thing is just start thinking about just how you're going to view the market. Like, when do you think it's going to peak? Look at different resources, look at different YouTubers, look at historical charts, and kind of come up with your own thesis on what you think here. Like for me, for example, I think the halving cycle and the bull market is based on more than just Bitcoin and the halving. It's global liquidity, it's the macro, it's everything. A lot of things go into it. So it's not just going to be based off of the certain date. It's going to be on those outside factors that are going to kind of tell me like, okay, this might be a good time, as well as just different targets, right? I have price targets for all of my bigger allocations. I do have price targets for all of them that in reality are kind of more like minimums, right? So I'm very conservative on my numbers, but those numbers that I have set up already are numbers that I have high confidence in hitting, right? So hopefully maybe it goes beyond that, but once it hits a lot of those targets, depending on the time, depending on how the macro's looking, depending on the environment's looking, depending on what's happening, I will likely start exiting, right? It's potential that, like, I'm really waiting to see what happens with the inauguration, what happens, how the market kind of adjusts that. Is it going to be a buy the rumor, sell the news kind of event? Is it going to be the beginning of bigger things? As things get announced, like if the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve actually does happen, like how is the market going to react? Just a lot of different things, guys. But in reality, just with the everything changing, the people coming in to this next cabinet, to this next government positions, it's a lot of bullish things, right? We've never had scenarios like this in the past. We have our Bitcoin ETF, an ETH ETF, a very likely Sol ETF. There's just a lot of things, right? Gary Gensler stepping down. We already have the next person who's going to be appointed is extremely pro-crypto. So many members of Congress and everybody in government being pro-crypto, the president being pro-crypto. Everything is set up for it to be a massive run where you want to be ready, you want to have targets, and it's up to you to determine. Like for me, for example, a lot of it's based on a lot of outside factors, but as far as from a pure crypto aspect, it's going to be the total crypto market cap is going to be play a big point. That's just where a lot of people are basing their projections. Whether you think, again, we're currently at 3.4 trillion, Do you think we're going to go to 8 trillion, 10 trillion, 12 trillion? Like, it's kind of up to you to determine what you think is going to happen here. But that's how I base a lot of my numbers off of, right? I have certain numbers. If we hit 8 trillion, this would be the target here for these coins. If we hit 10, this is the target. 10 kind of being the medium. Somewhere between 8 to 10 is where my prediction is. Maybe it goes way higher though. We don't really know. Like, especially with everything going on right now, it's kind of crazy, right? So this is types of things you got to think about. You got to look at like Bitcoin dominance. Like, how do you think that's going to factor in? Like, it's just a big thing, because if we look at previous cycles, you can see here, it's crazy to think, man, we peaked at freaking 70% last cycle. But you can clearly see here the top, and then what happened? It just bled all the way down, right down to like 40 freaking percent. Okay, and this is that altcoin run. Okay, this is that initial run, and then over here, farther down was or no, not even that far up. Right over here was the next run up, and you can see here it going down, right? So just a lot of factors. I mean, depending on how you look at things, you can look at dominance positions of different coins. So a lot of people use this for seeing when the altcoin cycle is going to start. You can also see like, okay, Sol's dominance is about 3%. If it remains in that position, if it keeps up with the market, what is it going to look like if we had a 10 trillion market cap, right? At that point, for easy math purposes, this brings you up to about a $300 billion market cap, because we're currently at about 100 billion. That's if everything goes up by that amount. That would put us at a potentially a 3x from here, like a $600 Sol, which can happen. It can go lower, it can lose its dominance, it can go out of the top 10. Like, there's a ton of factors, but these are the types of things you gotta consider about. Like, I don't necessarily do exact numbers, but I like to have like roundabouts and kind of have targets, right? Like, for example, a lot of people's targets with Solana is anywhere from 500 to $1,000, 1,000 being on the extreme high end in my opinion. My target's 5 to 650, somewhere in that range. Maybe it goes higher, maybe it goes lower. But again, a lot of it's just going to be dependent on your entry point. Okay, how early you got in, how much you stacked. I mean, 500 to some people, if you're getting in now, it's not going to be very appealing, right? About a 2.5x. But if you got in Christmas Day 2023 when it was $10, that 50x on a huge market cap coin, you put in even $1,000, you're going to be pretty happy with that, right? So again, it's up to you to determine how you're going to do it. Again, I have my different price targets as it gets closer, as the timing gets closer, or if I hit that target, maybe I'll sell. I do have different targets, even if different scenarios happen, right? So even if one super outperforms and another one underperforms, I will likely profit take into that one. Like, for example, Sol for me is one that I'm highly considering selling a bit more of, just to reallocate into a lower cap coin that has a little bit more potential. Just because, again, the best case scenario here is maybe a 5x, right? Do I even think it's going to hit that? Probably not, right? So could take maybe 10% of the allocation, throw it into another coin that I think has a bit more potential. That'll do maybe a 4 to 5x where I have high confidence, but has the potential to go a 10, 15, 20x, right? And this is going to be kind of the hard part, is that the time for these bigger market caps was back here, right? When Sol was dead, nobody wanted to talk about it, nobody wanted to buy it. Those were the times. So that's when you were able to get, hopefully, turn into 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 X's on even these big market cap coins. You're not going to get that now, right? You're going to have to take more risk by going into these smaller market cap coins, right? And this is why we're saying that the longer you wait, it's still possible. You can still do extremely well. It's just going to get more difficult and more risk, right? You have to take risk. This is a big thing, is that if you want to make that money, you got to invest. You got to take risk. And it's going to be up to you with that risk tolerance, right? Is it an extremely small risk tolerance? You just want to go with Bitcoin because you feel like you're going to get at least 50 to 100% on your return, or do you want to go with Sol so you can get at least definitely a 2x, potentially a 3x, maybe a little bit more? Do you want to go more degen-y? Like, these are the types of things to consider. These are the types of things to look at. Again, come up with those goals, come up with different price points, look at your overall goals, set up your things. Like, I literally, for every allocation I have that set amount that I wanted to target. As I complete that target, on to the next one. That one's done, on to the next one. And I go down, down, down until I get that allocation that I wanted. Okay, if this allocation hits this amount, how much potentially could I make if things repeat? And then go from there, right? And then when I add everything up, am I happy with those numbers? Okay, these are worst case scenario numbers. Now let's do a 10 trillion market cap. Let's do a 12 trillion. And then as the time gets closer, it'll be even more exact. It'll be like, okay, we are now April, May of 25. I hit my initial target price of Sol. I'm going to sell 50%. The other half I'm going to ride to see if it does follow the traditional cycle in Q3, Q4, and then go from there. Maybe early November, it's at 650, 700, and I sell another 30%. And I hang on to that 20% just in case for that miracle that it goes beyond, it goes more. Maybe it doesn't, maybe it dumps, and I get stuck holding 20% of my bag. Okay, or I decide to, you know what, it's not worth the risk. I'm going to go just take all my profit, and instead I'll roll the dice on my smaller cap coins, the ones that I was only threw $1,000 in, but I'm hoping for a 50 to 100x. But that way, if I lose out on that one, it's not that big of a deal because that was only 1% of my portfolio anyway, right? So chances are that my bigger caps, such as like Sol, AVAX, Caspa, I'm probably going to sell fairly early. Chances are I'm not going to hit the top, and I'm okay with that. I got in super early with a lot of them. I got in early with Sol. Same thing with Caspa. I've been mining. I've been holding on to a lot of it, and I'm okay with it, right? So it's very dependent on so many things, guys. So many factors. There's no right way to do this. It's only kind of your way. At the end of the day, we don't know what's going to peak. We don't know which one's going to be that 100x. We don't know which one's going to be that 1000x. We don't know which one's going to do that. There are going to be some of those coins, though. There are going to be some coins you hold that you bought a couple $100 worth and they turned into a 100x later on. Maybe it's one that you buy even now, this late in the game. Maybe it's something like this virtuals where 2 months ago it was a nickel and now it's $4 and something cents, right? Maybe you got your 100x here. Now you took that profit and then you degen again into another small cap coin and then you hit another 20x. And then you take that profit and roll it into another coin, another. You can keep snowballing that, right? That was our strategy these past 2 years. Maybe that can be your strategy here. For me, it's not going to be. I'm trying to simplify things. I did all my degenning these past 2 years. For now, for me, it's just hanging on to that capital and kind of focusing on those goals and just executing, right? But it's, again, it's going to be tough, especially mentally. If you sell like way too early, like if you sell down here at $1.60 and the thing goes up to 25 bucks, are you going to be able to live with that? Are you going to be okay with that? These are the types of things that you have to consider, right? And these are going to be possibilities. It is going to happen in certain coins. You're going to do that, and you're going to think you hit the top, and then 3 months later, out of nowhere, we're in 2026, and then it does another 10x from here. Like, we don't freaking know, right? And that's, again, that's the hard part. This is the part that you have to factor in. It's going to be a possibility, and you got to be okay with it, right? Otherwise, literally, you're going to drive yourself batshit crazy, guys. Like, take care of your mental health, set up those goals, take the emotions out. Okay, definitely want to stress that. Take the emotions out and do the damn thing, right? This is our year. We've been working for years for this year alone. Let's take advantage, let's maximize, and let's get that money, right? So, it was kind of a long, rambly one. Let me know in the comments, guys. What do you guys think, though? Have you guys started these goals? Have you guys been doing the damn thing? Are you guys just executing? How are you guys feeling right now? Are you happy with your allocation? Are you happy with what you've done? Are you locking in more? Let me know what you guys are doing. Let me know how you guys are feeling at this point in the game, okay? Please comment, like, and subscribe, guys. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I am out.